all these rules cease to apply. They don't matter. They're not rules. Well, 20 years experience here is more important than this education here or 10 years experience. Those aren't rules. One recruiter might have a diluted opinion that says that. What the hell do they know? They don't have the 20 years experience. How would they know if that prepares you to be a better employee in this role than someone else? How would they know? The only people that would know that is someone who has both 20 years experience in that role and the other thing that you mentioned that you're comparing it against. You know what I'm saying? These are artificial guesses based on stereotypes. Okay, I used to teach this in university. That's all they are. For example, when the recruiter says, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Right? And you give an answer. And they say, oh, I'm sorry, that's not a good answer. Therefore, you're not a fit for this role. Well, where does that come from? That comes from assumptions based on statistical probability, right? They're trying to get to know you without actually getting to know you. So the way they do that is they rely on heuristics and they rely on stereotypes, right? If you know that the majority of people that have been fired from a role before have a 15% greater likelihood of being fired from this job if you were to hire them, then you're going to apply that rule to anyone who says, oh, they were fired from a previous job. Are you going to assume that they have a 15% chance, a greater chance of not working out, right? Is that true? No, that's simply based on statistics, right? You're making an assumption that this person follows that rule and they are not one of the exceptions, right? So similarly, stuff like this, it's equally invalid, right? The thing is, they have to make some kind of determination. They got hundreds of candidates. You have to narrow that down to a handful, like maybe 6 that you interview, and that you look at seriously. You do background checks and you check references and all that kind of stuff, and you interview them. And so you have to have some criteria to sort of pare it down. But this is how they do things at the worker level, where quite frankly, and don't take this the wrong way, but quite frankly, it doesn't really matter to them who they get. If one person doesn't work out, they let them go, they hire another person. It really doesn't matter. It's where you hire people at higher levels where it matters. You put like a vice president that you hired that is bad in charge of a division of a company. In 3 months, that person can make the entire revenue stream for that division evaporate. Not only that, they can drive away all the talented employees, and if that weren't enough, they can ruin the company's reputation with their customers permanently, right? You want to make sure you get the right person for those jobs. How do they do it? Through networking. They're not going to take anyone's word at anything. They want to know for sure who you are. At the lower level, you can afford to hire strangers. You take your best guess. Usually it works. If it doesn't, no big deal. You replace them. You know what I mean? So these little rules they come up with, right? They're arbitrary.